Tonight, families who lost loved ones during the pandemic wait for answers 4 years on. Relatives say they've had no information from prosecutors who are investigating thousands of COVID deaths across Scotland.
People were told that their loved one's death would be investigated by the Crown, and now there seems to be a wall of silence for many of these families.
Also tonight, French President Macron has paid tribute to Gisèle Pellico for her courage, calling her a trailblazer for women. And 20 years on from the Asian tsunami, we look back at the massive relief effort here and how aid work has changed.
Coming up in tonight's sport, we'll look ahead to tonight's Premiership action. And Celtic boss Brendan Rodgers is staying tight-lipped on any potential return for Kieran Tierney as he discusses his January transfer plans.
And later we're joined by Idlewild frontman Roddy Wimble, who performs his festive track, Christmas Without You.
Welcome to The Seven.
At the height of the pandemic, a special unit was formed to investigate whether criminal charges should be brought over thousands of COVID deaths across Scotland. 4 years later, the team of prosecutors are still looking into more than 4,000 deaths, mostly in care homes. But not a single case has come to court, and people who lost loved ones are now urging the Crown Office to lift a shroud of mystery around the cases. Andrew Picken reports.
As concern grows about the spread of coronavirus in care homes, we find out about a significant outbreak in a home on Skye.
12 residents died at the Home Farm nursing home in Portree during the first wave of the pandemic. John Angus Gordon was one of them. John's death is among thousands covered by a Crown Office investigation first announced in 2020. His son, John Gordon, is still waiting for answers over the death of his dad.
At the beginning, people were told that their loved one's death would be investigated by the Crown, and now there seems to be a wall of silence for many of these families.
Home Farm was taken into public ownership after a string of COVID-related deaths which are subject to an ongoing criminal investigation.
Time goes on, you're kind of left in limbo. You're still waiting for answers because, you know, I suppose the question has to be asked, you know, where are things in terms of Police Scotland and the Crown?
There are two ongoing public inquiries into what happened during the COVID pandemic, and they've heard some emotive evidence of its impact.
So she died on her own. The one thing we never ever wanted for her.
Prosecutors here at the Crown Office will decide if some of the COVID deaths will be subject to fatal accident inquiries or potentially criminal charges. How long it's taken to reach those decisions is causing a growing sense of frustration for families.
That it is 4 years down the line and they do want a resolution of some sort. They want answers because at the moment there's a bit of a shroud of mystery, and it's the ongoing not knowing that makes it more difficult and really frustrating for them. We understand that an investigation is ongoing, but having absolutely no timescale, even if our families could be told it will be a year or 2 years, at least we can manage their expectations.
The Crown Office said this is the single largest investigation of deaths in Scottish history, and added, "We recognise that it must be difficult for the families of those who've lost a loved one. There are complex issues raised in both individual cases and across groups of cases which have been reported." The COVID deaths investigation has cost £11 million so far, and it remains unclear when it will conclude. Andrew Picken, BBC News.
The French President, Emmanuel Macron, has paid tribute to Gisèle Pellico for her courage, calling her a trailblazer for women who had moved and inspired people around the world. Yesterday, Madame Pellico's former husband, Dominique Pellico, was jailed for 20 years for organising her repeated drugging and rape by dozens of strangers. All 50 of his co-defendants were also found guilty. And many in France are determined that the country will now enter a new chapter. From Avignon, here's Andrew Carding.
It's market day in the town where Dominique and Gisèle Pellico used to do their shopping. Locals here not convinced yesterday's 51 guilty verdicts will transform France.
Non, je crois pas.
No, I don't think it'll change much, says Brigitte. Women often report abuse to the police, but nothing happens. A few years in prison, that's not justice, says Reda, complaining that the sentences were too light to discourage others. At the end of the trial yesterday, Gisèle Pelicot left the court a French hero. But it's clearly not a role she relishes.
She's very happy to be going home. She's relieved. She doesn't want to be seen as an icon. In reality, she remains a very simple person.
In the village of Mazan, where Gisèle Pelicot was repeatedly drugged and raped, many remain shocked by the words of the local mayor, who told me at the start of the trial that Gisèle's suffering had been exaggerated.
Yes, I'm diminishing it because it could have been a lot worse. No children were hurt, no one died.
Did you see the interview that we did with the mayor of Mazan?
Yes, I think it's a perfect proof that a lot of political men, especially, absolutely doesn't realize the problem. The problem is huge.
There's no doubt that what happened in this one small village has shocked France profoundly. The question now is what practical steps the authorities here can take to address the issues that Gisèle Pelicot fought so courageously to expose.
This French MP was drugged by another politician last year. He's denied wrongdoing. She feels the system remains stacked against most victims.
It's a disaster because very few victims ever get to trial. There is a lack of evidence and a lack of medical and legal support.
Plenty for France to work on then, as Gisèle Pelicot's international admirers continue to gather here. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Avignon.
The Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry says it will commission an independent review of its engagement with an abuse survivor who asked for his name to be removed from official transcripts. It follows the disappearance of Kevin Sutherland and a search involving police and the RNLI lifeboat at Queensferry. Stephen Gordon has more.
Kevin Sutherland spent time in various care facilities across central Scotland into his teens. It was an experience he described as hell when he gave evidence to the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry in 2022. Now, he gave that evidence having waived his right to anonymity, but in recent months he's been in touch with the inquiry in an attempt to have his name removed from the publicly available transcripts. Now, a survivors group that he'd been in touch with about those efforts say that in recent days he'd been told that the inquiry's position on his anonymity would not be reversed. It was a decision that the 33-year-old himself referenced in a late-night social media post on Thursday that he said was his final announcement. It was that social media post that sparked the emergency response that followed. Now, in a statement, a spokesperson for the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry said that it had been made aware of a possible tragic incident and that our thoughts are with all of those who are affected. In the interests of transparency, it continued, the inquiry will commission an independent review as soon as possible to consider all aspects of its interactions with the individual. The police, meanwhile, say that searches of an area of the River Forth are ongoing following reports of concern for a man.
Stephen Gordon reporting there. Now, the US is facing a government shutdown after a spending bill backed by President-elect Donald Trump was voted down in the House of Representatives. Dozens of Republicans defied Trump by joining Democrats to reject the funding plan. It means that if no deal is agreed by tonight, some federal services will begin shutting down from the early hours. Now, this Boxing Day, communities around the coast of the Indian Ocean and beyond will mark 20 years since a devastating tsunami wiped out lives and livelihoods like no other in recorded history. This was the moment the story broke on BBC News back in 2004.
At least 8,000 people die after a powerful earthquake hit South Asia. It triggered giant waves which hit India, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Thailand and Indonesia.
In fact, around 230,000 lives were lost, among them around 150 Brits, many of them in the beach resorts of Thailand and Sri Lanka. While many of the affected areas have successfully rebuilt and moved on from the disaster, the relief effort is ongoing in places still plagued by poverty and poor infrastructure. Well, earlier I spoke to Hugh Owen from the Disasters Emergency Commission about the humanitarian response.
Well, it was probably, the biggest natural disaster sort of in living memory, arguably the largest ever recorded, 9.1 or 9.2 on the Richter scale. Huge, really, right in the centre of the Indian Ocean. Waves maybe up to 100 feet high at times. 1.7 million people forced from their homes. I was just thinking about that on the way down here. That's about Greater Glasgow. You can imagine the whole of Greater Glasgow being sort of washed away, or everyone in this area being washed away by huge waves. Absolutely terrifying.
There was a huge outpouring of grief, of a need to do something. How did that sort of kind of coalesce around the DEC?
Yeah, well, for people maybe that don't know too much about the DEC, so it's 15 of the biggest UK humanitarian charities, and they go about their own work most of the time. But when there's a disaster on that scale, then they all come together through the committee, and with a partnership with the BBC and all the other main terrestrial broadcasters, we get that message out to everybody.
And in terms of that appeal and those appeals, it's still one of the biggest that you've done.
Yeah, if you were to sort of roll in inflation, in today's money, that would be nearly £700 million. So the response was incredible, and I'm pleased to say that whenever we call for the Scottish public to support, they really are very, very, very generous.
I mean, full disclosure here, and I have mentioned this to you, but I was out in Thailand at the time of the tsunami. Thankfully, the island I was on was safe, and there were no casualties on that island. But I did experience the chaos in the aftermath of any disaster like that. Chaos around how the relief and how the aid was delivered. I remember, for instance, being sent money from people at home, not knowing what to do, just sending us money. We made it to Bangkok and we just put it in the Red Cross sort of collection box because nobody seemed to know what to do with it. Yeah. And I've always wondered if that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, there's no sort of right or wrong, to be honest, and I think most people will do what they think is right. And I'm not saying that's the best thing you could have done, but it was a reasonable and a decent thing to do. Yeah, it was inevitably chaotic, a huge number of different countries. As a result of that, there was quite a lot of chaos and actually a huge number of lessons learned. At that time, there was less responsiveness to local communities. So as people responding internationally, people moving into the region, maybe had the idea that we know best what's needed. But that's really changed a huge amount now. So we very much try and get money to local people and local experts.
Just finally then, 20 years on, what is the legacy of that aid effort?
In terms of what we were able to do with the funds, I mean, we were able to rebuild thousands and thousands of homes, schools, health centres, and of course, thousands of lives were saved. There was one story I was reading from my colleagues at Save the Children. A 7-year-old boy was washed away. He lost his mother and his 2 sisters, was stranded for 21 days on his own, found on a beach, in fact, by a television journalist back in the Times, taken to hospital. He recovered, was reunited with his father and grandfather because of clever systems that the agencies were able to use to reunify families. And now he's a grown-up 27-year-old guy, and he's got a family and a young child. And, he talks about that story as being a miracle, really, that he's still alive with the help of all those people after such a terrible tragedy for him and his family.
Yeah, well, that is a good story to end on. We're very grateful for your time, Hugh Owen from the Disasters Emergency Committee. Thank you.
Pleasure.
20 years, can hardly believe it. OK, Sheila is here, and a vision, a sparkly festive vision.
'Tis the season, Laura, isn't it? Good evening. Lots of festive football coming up, and it all starts tonight. In the Premiership, Motherwell are hosting Kilmarnock, and our reporter Martin Dowden is at Fir Park for us.
The Premiership returns here at Fir Park tonight. It's Motherwell v Kilmarnock. Motherwell in the lofty position of 4th place after back-to-back wins in the league. That followed 3 consecutive defeats and shows you the value of getting consecutive wins in this table. Kilmarnock themselves, off the back of a really strong performance against Hearts and win down to 10 men very, very early in that game, and they know the value of backing that up with a win here tonight. That could propel them up towards the middle of that table, as they've been languishing down near that bottom after a fairly frustrating campaign so far. You can follow all the action live on Sportsound, on BBC Sounds and online.
Well, it's been the main talking point all week, but today Rangers manager Philippe Clement says all of Europe has been discussing the decision not to award his side a penalty in their League Cup final defeat by Celtic. The Ibrox boss insists the moment was a bad advert for the Scottish game, but praised the transparency from head of referees Willie Collum. The Belgian also said his players do not need motivation out of negativity as they aim to move on when they face Dundee tomorrow.
Not only for Rangers or for every team losing a game like that, but it's also for Scottish football really bad advertisement. And all of Europe have been talking about that, about what happened in this final. And that's a pity, because it was two good teams playing a good game of football with everything that every fan wants into a game. And there's been much more talks about the game decisive moment in that way. So that's a pity for Scottish football.
Now, Kieran Tierney has been heavily linked with a return to Celtic, but boss Brendan Rodgers stayed tight-lipped over any potential move as he discussed his plans for the January transfer window. The Scotland defender is out of contract at Arsenal this summer and is free to speak to clubs outside England in January. Rodgers, who revealed he had talks with Dermot Desmond about signings in Dublin this week, said Tierney was an instrumental part of his earlier success at the club, but that he would only talk about a player once he's signed. Hearts boss Neil Critchley believes his squad has the ability to turn things around after the crushing disappointment of their Conference League exit.
It's natural to feel a certain way when you're not producing the results that we want. That's human nature. You know, if we're winning games and scoring goals, we'll do, then you'll be better for it.
Now to rugby, and Glasgow Warriors host Edinburgh at Hampden rather than Scotstoun on Sunday as the league champions seek to make the most of a big backing in the first leg of their 1872 Cup. The head coaches of both clubs acknowledge the importance of winning derby matches, but they point to the other benefits that come from putting one over on your rivals at this time of year.
Whichever team in this part of the season plays really well usually reap the rewards later on. So regardless of the fact that it's derbies, I think we must continue to play well. I think the whole team has contributed in the last 4 weeks. So I'm excited to say, that also this group going into the two derbies are eager to contribute and eager to be the best version of themselves.
You can look at the game in isolation and as the 1872 Cup game, but we'd like to look at it as a URC game, and definitely for us it's an opportunity to see how far we've grown over the last 3-4 months. We managed to put in some really good performances at home, but have struggled away. So Hampden's just another opportunity for us to show that we can do better when we're away from Hive.
And LeBron James has broken the record for the most minutes played in NBA history as he helped the Los Angeles Lakers to beat the Sacramento Kings. The 39-year-old surpassed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he completed his, wait for it, 57,447th minute on court, having also beaten Abdul-Jabbar's all-time scoring record earlier this year. Can't quite get my head around that number, but it sounds like a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And just a reminder, Queen's Park against Wraith Rovers in the Championship coming up after this.
Lovely. I hope you've got a night out with that on. Thanks, Sheila. Well, Last Christmas by Wham has just been announced as Christmas #1 again. But while the festive classics are all well and good, there are artists out there creating new ones. Singer-songwriter and Idlewild frontman Roddy Wimble has included a Christmas song called Christmas Without You on his new album. We'll be treated to a performance of it a little later on, but earlier I sat down with Roddy and asked him if he'd ever written a Christmas song before.
No, I haven't. I've written lots of songs, but never a Christmas song. And I do love Christmas songs. I like they're sort of condensed magic. There's only like a short period of the year when you can listen to them really So therefore they've got to be quite economical in their lyrical content and the melodies and things like that. So yeah, and I've played Christmas gigs yearly for quite a long time. So I thought it was about time to kind of put my own Christmas song into that. So yeah, it was almost like a wee bit of a challenge too, to be able to try and write one that was good.
Yeah,
hopefully.
It is fantastic, and we are going to hear it at the end of the programme. You very kindly played it for us. So with this new album, let me just get the name of it right, Sometime During the Night We Fell Off the Map. It is a solo endeavour. How does it compare to your previous solo stuff, and how does that compare to your sort of Idlewild catalogue?
Well, Idlewild's more of a collective. It's like a rock band, so 5 people working together to make the music, and that's the way it's always been. But with my solo work, I've gone like 8 solo records now, and they're all quite different. Sometimes they're essentially maybe more folky, more acoustic. Other times it's more electronic, and yeah, I guess like I've tried to do different things. The consistent thing is obviously my lyrics and my voice and all the people I work with. They're basically collaborations, my solo records, with different musicians. So this one we did all in Mull. We all live up in the Hebrides, so Soren and Hannah and Danny, all the people I play with. We recorded it in an old church actually in the south of Mull, and yeah. So. And
does that give the music a different sort of quality? Why did you choose to do it in that specific place?
Mainly just practically because we all live there. and the church has been it's not a church anymore, it's been turned into a studio, so we just thought it was 10 miles from where everyone lived, and it was, you know, churches have wonderful atmospheric kind of qualities, don't they? Particularly when you're recording acoustic music, because largely the new record is all acoustic.
I just wanted to ask you, earlier in the programme we were talking about it being 20 years since the Boxing Day tsunami, and I know that you guys at Idlewild played in that, you know, charity gig that happened to raise money for it. What are your memories? Do you have memories of that gig?
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember it being put together quite quickly in a way that, like, you know, pretty much every Scottish band of that moment was playing at it, like Mogwai and Travis and Franz Ferdinand, and so everyone was there. There was a real sort of camaraderie between all the people there, but it was quite hectic. That was my memory of it. I remember we played in front of the curtain as the band were sitting up behind the curtain. It was like that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You're also playing Hogmanay this year as well.
Yeah.
How does that feel? It's quite a showpiece event.
Yeah, well, it seems to have got more and more as the years have gone on. I mean, Idlewild have played it quite a few times, but this year it's actually the night before. They do a programme the night before now as well, so we're playing on the 30th at the Assembly Rooms, and we haven't played an Idlewild gig in Scotland for a while now, so that'll be good.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, can't think of anybody better to bring in the new year with than Idlewild. Thank you so much for coming in to see us, and happy Christmas when it comes, and good luck with the new album and the new song. Thank you. Anna Christopher is here with the weather. How's it looking? Not long to go to the big day, but
yes,
stormy, I hear.
Stormy this weekend, absolutely. For the Christmas period, if you like, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, actually much quieter, much calmer, actually quite mild. Could be 12, 13 degrees in the northeast.
Wow.
The warmest Christmas day on record we've seen is about 15, so we're not far off that. Yeah. But certainly, as you mentioned, this weekend will be stormy, and if anyone's travelling, that could cause a few issues, some disruption on the travel front.
Yikes.
Thanks, Laura. Very good evening to you. We've had a pretty decent afternoon of weather with some sunshine after all that rain this morning. A few showers around, and actually into this evening and overnight, those showers still with us, and then through the early hours, cloud thickens and rain arrives from the west. Winds begin to strengthen as well. Temperatures at their lowest, 4 to 7 Celsius. But as Laura mentioned, this weekend will be stormy. A deep area of low pressure situated to our north, bringing some widespread gales and the risk of travel disruption too. So there is a Met Office yellow warning almost countrywide for gusts of 55 to 65 miles an hour in the northwest. Stronger than that, so disruption on the ferries, maybe the roads and rails as well. Big waves around the west coast, overtopping on causeways too. And certainly, whilst it's windy everywhere, it's also pretty showery, with those showers frequent and squally in nature, with rain and sleet to low levels, more wintry though on higher ground. And temperatures by afternoon around about 6 or 7 Celsius for many, so quite a cold feel. Not particularly pleasant conditions if you've got to battle the high street, I'm afraid. And likewise, if you've got to travel, there could well be some disruption, as I mentioned, maybe some power cuts in the northwest and some damage to buildings and trees as well. A little bit drier in the northeast, but the showers never really that far away at all. Into tomorrow evening, and we'll hold on to those high winds and the showers, and actually the snow level coming down. That means we could see some sleet or snow to relatively low levels overnight to Sunday. Icy patches around as well, so treacherous conditions in places, certainly on untreated roads and surfaces. That takes us to the second half of the weekend, and once again it's a windy day, perhaps not quite the strength of wind, but still gale to severe gale force around the coast, and a fair number of showers, easing off through central and southern parts later on, but frequent across the north, and again a chilly feel. That was the weekend. Next week, better, quieter, calmer, milder. Wednesday is Christmas Day, 12 or 13 Celsius. Bit of sunshine for some, cloudy for many. You can see, though, on the chart there, outbreaks of rain in the northwest, in the northeast, highs of 13 degrees. That's the forecast for now. Laura.
Maybe a festive swim then.
Maybe,
although
yes.
not with those waves, I don't think. Thank you, Christopher. And that is it from us for tonight. As promised, playing us out then is Roddy Wimble and Ban with their track Christmas Without You. Thanks to them for this wonderful recording, and to you for watching tonight and all the nights. Good night.
Stopping by the woods on a snowy evening, wishing for snow to start falling. Winter keeps the world at a distance, and you stay inside with your memories. The fire's reflecting in the cabin window, wishing for your shadow to appear. You leave the Christmas tree lights on to confuse the stars. It made the moon seem closer to Mars. And it's true, 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 winter feels blue. True, 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 it's strange to have Christmas without you. The Christmas tree lights on to confuse the stars. It made the moon feel closer to Mars. And it's true, 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 winter feels blue. True, 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 and strange to have Christmas without you. The Christmas tree lights on to confuse the stars. It made the moon seem closer to Mars. And it's true,